Have you ever met someone who knew your secrets? Your real secrets? Not the things you tell friends late at night, but the memories you don't even remember until the dreams remind you. What if I told you a patient once described my nightmares to me, in vivid detail, before I ever said a word? I've been carrying this inside me for almost 4 years. It eats at me during the day, and follows me into sleep at night. I haven't spoken about it, not to my family, not to my colleagues, not even to the therapist I saw afterward, because the truth sounds like madness, and I think a part of me still hopes it wasn't. My name is Linda Reyes. I'm a psychiatric nurse with nearly a decade of experience. I've worked across different states, institutions, wards, seen everything from violent psychosis to complete catatonia. I don't scare easy. For the past 5 years I've been assigned to an old state-run psychiatric facility in northern Massachusetts. I won't name it, not because I'm protecting them, but because I don't think that place exists on any official list anymore. The building sits on a hill above an old mill town, flanked by woods on 3 sides, and shrouded in fog most of the year. It's the kind of place where your phone barely works and the hallways echo longer than they should. The locals call it the Iron Orchard, though I've never figured out why. The air is thick there, like it holds onto memories too long. The paint on the walls flakes like peeling skin. There are rooms they never use, whole wings that aren't part of the main layout but still show up on the original blueprints. This was supposed to be just another night shift, one more stretch of hours, one more round of meds, one more logbook entry. Instead, I met him. He called himself Mason, 33 years old, quiet, cooperative, no prior history of violence. He came in after a suicide attempt, still dazed, barely speaking. But when he finally did start to talk, he told me something I will never forget. "You dream about the lake," he said, "with the girl in the water, calling your name." I felt like I'd swallowed ice, because that, down to the phrasing, is a dream I've had since I was a child, a dream I've never told anyone about, and that was only the beginning. Have you ever stepped into a place that felt wrong, not because of what you could see or hear, but because of what your body told you before your brain caught up? That was the Oakbridge Psychiatric Hospital for me, a place so drenched in silence that the air itself seemed to resist sound, a building with walls too thick for light, and shadows that clung like parasites. I've worked in many facilities over the years, but none like Oakbridge. Hidden in a grove of sickly leaning trees, just outside of town, the hospital sat as an abandoned church, gray-bricked, cruciform, forgotten by time. It had originally been built in 1893, as a sanatorium, then repurposed in the bones of the building were Victorian, narrow halls, crooked staircases, tall windows that were always fogged from the inside. But the soul of it, that place had no soul, or if it did, it was buried under decades of pain. My name is Linda. I'm a registered psychiatric nurse with nearly 14 years of experience in acute mental health care. I've worked in everything from community shelters to high-security psych wards. I'm not fragile. I've seen breakdowns, violence, psychosis, things that would make most people bolt. But Oakbridge tested something deeper, something no training prepared me for. I had transferred in for a 6-month rotation to help relieve an understaffed ward. No one really gave details about why staff retention was so poor there, only that I'd be working alongside 2 nurses and a night doctor named Dr. Evan Harrow. He seemed professional, if distant, and I assumed he was just burnt out like the rest of us. But I remember something strange about our first meeting. He looked at me as if he recognized me, but we'd never met. Ward C was the oldest part of the hospital still in use. The hallway that led to it had peeling green paint, overhead lights that flickered without rhythm, and an old tarnished sign that simply read, "C Wing, admittance by clearance only." Patients there were different, not in diagnosis but in presence, quiet, watchful, as if something had stolen their voices and replaced them with a kind of waiting. There was one room in Ward C, room 6, that the staff seemed to tiptoe around. It wasn't locked or sealed, just a void. Every time I passed it, I felt like something on the other side of the door had paused to listen. One of the older aides, Jasmine, once whispered, "That's where they used to put the long-term unreachables." I asked what that meant, and she just shook her head. "We don't talk about sick." That was my first week. The silence. The way the patients glanced at that door and then looked away. The temperature in that hallway always a few degrees colder, even though the vents were shared with the rest of the building. These weren't signs I could write in a report, but I started to wonder, what happened in room 6, and why did it feel like it had been waiting for me? It started with little things you could shrug off once or twice, but not when they kept happening. A clipboard a medication tray left slightly ajar when I was sure I'd sealed it. At first I chalked it up to fatigue. Night shifts distort your sense of time, of certainty. But then there was the call. It was around 2:13 a.m. I was alone at the nurse's station, reading over patient logs. The phone rang, its shrill tone echoing through the corridor. I picked up instinctively. "Ward C, this is Nurse Reyes speaking." Static, then a low whisper, as if someone were speaking just behind the receiver. Not through it, but behind it. "She's drowning." I froze. My blood ran cold. "Hello?" I asked, but there was no one on the other end. Just more static, and the faintest sound like bubbles rising through water. I hung up. I checked the call log. No number. No record. When I asked the switchboard operator later, she insisted no calls had come through to Ward C that night. I didn't report it. What would I say? A ghost called me at 2 in the morning. I already knew how that would look on paper. That week, the temperature in the hallway near room 6 dropped again. I started wearing an extra sweater during my rounds. One night, I brought a portable thermometer from the supply closet. The hallway outside room 6 read 52. The rest of the wing was a comfortable. The doors in Ward C are solid, reinforced with old iron latches and rounded handles that creak when turned. But room 6, sometimes I'd walk past it and see the door slightly ajar. Just a crack, always just enough for the darkness inside to breathe onto the hallway. I tried to close it once, I swear. I pushed with all my strength, but it resisted, like it didn't want to shut. When it finally did click into place, the echo it made didn't sound like a door, it sounded like a sigh. It was Jasmine who finally said what I was too afraid to admit out loud. "You ever feel like room 6 knows you're there before you even reach it?" she whispered during a late shift. I nodded. Yes. Every time. And then came Mason. He was admitted under strange circumstances, brought in by county police after being found wandering along the highway barefoot, muttering phrases in Latin. His clothes were soaked, though it hadn't rained in days. He had no history of psychiatric illness, no drugs in his system, and no family that would claim him. Just a name he gave, Mason. He didn't speak for 48 hours. And then the first thing he said to me was, "You never told anyone about the lake." Not a question. A statement. I was alone with him in the observation room. He looked directly into my eyes when he said it. Not threatening. Just knowing. I felt sick, like the floor had shifted under me. I haven't dreamed of that lake since I was a teenager. A dream I'd buried. A girl calling from beneath the surface, my name echoing over still water. He couldn't know that. No one could. After that night, I couldn't let it go. Mason had torn something open in me, a splinter in my mind that refused to work itself free. I kept going over what he said. How casually he dropped that line about the lake, like he hadn't just reached into the darkest part of me. So I started looking. I wasn't sure what I was looking for exactly, but I had to know more, about him. About room 6, about why none of this made sense. I pulled Mason's intake file. It was thin, too thin. No prior hospitalizations, no known history of mental illness, no criminal record, no listed address. The field for next of kin was simply typed, unknown. And then there was a section at the bottom, barely visible, like it had been erased and retyped. The attending doctor was listed as H. Miller. But we didn't have a Dr. Miller on staff. I asked Dr. Harrow about it. He glanced at the file, eyes narrowing, then handed it back without answering. Some files get misfiled, old names, don't worry about it. But I did worry about it, especially because Harrow looked pale when he said it. Like I'd reminded him of something he didn't want to remember. Later that night, I went to the storage room in the basement, the one where they kept old patient records in dusty cardboard boxes, barely organized. I don't know what I expected to find, but after 3 hours of combing through brittle papers and faded ink, I found something, a photo, tucked inside a manila folder marked Former Staff 9. It was a staff picture, clearly old, yellowed by time, doctors, nurses, orderlies, at least 20 people, but in the back row near the corner was Mason. Not someone who looked like Mason, it was him, exactly him. Same bone structure, same empty gaze, same sunken eyes, only the photo was dated 34 years ago. My heart pounded so hard I nearly dropped the folder. This wasn't possible. Mason was 33 years old according to but the man in the photo was identical to the one locked in room 6. I showed the photo to Jasmine the next day. She stared at it for a long time and whispered, "I've seen him before, but not here, in my dreams." From that moment I stopped thinking this was just a patient issue. This wasn't a man having a breakdown. This was something else, something that remembered. After that, everything started unraveling. Subtly at first, like threads coming loose in a sweater, but the more I tugged, the more I realized there was something enormous hidden beneath the surface. Mason's behavior shifted. He went from catatonic silence to eerie lucidity. He'd speak in riddles, fragments of dreams I hadn't had in years. Once, while I was checking his vitals, he muttered, "The girl under the dock, she never stopped screaming. You just stopped listening." I dropped the stethoscope. That dream, that nightmare I had every week when I was 10, I've never told anyone, not even in therapy, and yet here he was, narrating my childhood fears like they belonged to him. I tried to report the incident, but Harrow shut it down immediately. "We don't document hallucinations when they're shared, Linda," he said. "That's not how delusions work." His wording chilled me. Shared. As if what I'd experienced was his, not mine. And then came the night I heard someone crying down the hallway. Not a patient, not a staff member. A child. It was around 3:00 a.m. I was alone, doing rounds. I heard the sobbing coming from room 6, the room no one entered. The room that was always cold. But the cry was unmistakable. A little girl, gasping between sobs. I stood outside the door, paralyzed. Every instinct screamed not to open it, but the crying wouldn't stop. It was familiar, not just in sound but in feeling, like it was a memory I hadn't made. When I finally opened the door, there was nothing. No furniture, no patient, just 4 white walls and a puddle of water on the floor, still rippling. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. Instead, I started searching the hospital's internal archives, not the official ones but the old handwritten incident logs they used to keep before computers, and that's when I found it. An entry from night. A nurse named Carol Anders had filed it. Male patient. No ID, placed in temporary hold. Spoke only in dreams. Claimed to know things about staff childhoods. Nurse requested transfer after 1 week. Room 6. Patient referred to Dr. H. Miller. No record of discharge. No discharge. No transfer. Just vanished. I looked for Carol's name in the staff directory. Nothing. It's like she never existed. The deeper I dug, the more I found empty spaces, blacked out files, records marked archived offsite, but with no locations, patients with no outcomes, and always, rooms. I started waking up with bruises, finger marks around my wrists. One morning I found dirt under my fingernails, and the scent of lake water in my sheets. I live in a 3rd-floor apartment with no plants, no lake, no explanation. Whatever Mason was, he wasn't just a man, He was a door, a window, something that opened up the space between memory and reality, and let things crawl through, things I thought I'd buried long ago. There's a moment when fear crosses a threshold, when it's no longer about what might happen, but about what already has, without you realizing it. That moment came for me the night I stayed late to update patient charts. Everyone had gone home. The halls were silent, save for the occasional buzz from flickering fluorescents overhead. I should have left hours earlier, but something pulled me back to Mason's file. I kept staring at the photo, the staff photo from 1989, with Mason's face staring out, ageless, untouched by time. I couldn't take it anymore. At 2:47 a.m. I walked down to room 6. I didn't knock. The door wasn't locked, though it should have been. It never really locked. I stepped inside, half expecting the cold. But that night, it wasn't just cold. It was wrong. The air didn't move. The shadows didn't flicker, even when I turned on the light. And there he was, Mason, sitting on the bare mattress, looking right at me. "Do you remember now?" he asked. "What are you?" I whispered. He smiled, but it wasn't human. Not cruel, not kind, just ancient. "You dream in echoes," he said. "And the echoes dream back." I demanded answers. I shouted. I told him to stop talking in riddles and just tell me what he knew. That's when he said it. "She was yours. You let her drown. Now she wants you to see." And then he lunged. Not physically, not like a patient attacking a nurse. It was like he stepped into me. Like I blinked and suddenly I wasn't standing in room 6 anymore. I was 10 years old, barefoot, standing at the edge of Lake Briar, the one near my childhood home. I hadn't been there in decades. And she was there. The girl. The one from the dreams. She was calling me again. But this time, I couldn't look away. Her face was pale, bloated with grief and time. She was reaching up, her eyes locked onto mine. And for the first time, I remembered her name. Ellie. My cousin. She drowned when we were kids. I'd always believed I wasn't there that day, that I was homesick. That's what they told me. But Mason, whatever he was, had broken through that lie. I had been there. I'd seen her go under. And I'd run. The guilt slammed into me like a wave. I collapsed in that room, sobbing. I don't know how long I lay there. When I came to, the room was empty. Mason was gone. Only a trail of muddy footprints led to the door, and the scent of lake water lingered in the air. The next day, I wasn't sure if what happened in room 6 had been real, or some dissociative episode. I told myself stress was catching up to me, that grief could create hallucinations. But then I opened Mason's file again, and something had changed. There was a name where there hadn't been one before. Patient alias, Ellie Gray. I stared at it, trying to make sense of it. That name wasn't there the day before. I was sure of it, but now it was typed cleanly across the top of the form, like it had always been there. Ellie, not Mason. And Gray. That name triggered something in me, a memory, a journal entry. My cousin Ellie. Her full name was Eleanor Grace Wren. Ellie Gray. It wasn't just a name, it was an anagram. The letters rearranged, a name twisted into something else. Like someone or something was trying to speak through code. My heart started to pound as I pieced it together. This wasn't a patient's alias. This was hers. I dug deeper. Buried in the hospital's internal record system, under a mislabeled entry in a 1991 archive, I found a file for a patient listed only as E.G., admitted at age 10, same as Ellie when she died. The file was nearly blank, redacted beyond comprehension. But one note stood out, half faded on the final page. Subject exhibits signs of psychometric resonance, possible transference. Memories that do not belong. Dreams of drowning. Shared hallucinations noted in attending staff. I should have walked away then, closed the file and left the hospital for good. But it was too late. I was part of it now. I took the name to Dr. Harrow. I wanted to know what the hell was going on. He didn't deny it. In fact, he looked relieved. "You weren't supposed to find that," he said. "But maybe it's better that you did." I pressed him. What was the truth? Who was Ellie Gray? What was Mason? What happened in room 6? He looked tired, haunted. "There was a program," he said slowly. In the 80s, they brought in children who experienced, let's call it, residual memory phenomena. Kids who dreamed of things that never happened except they had. To someone else, Ellie was the strongest. Her dreams started becoming contagious. We tried to isolate the effect, but something went wrong. He wouldn't say more, just that she died, or disappeared. The records weren't clear, and then came the most horrifying revelation. She's not in the ground, Linda. She's still here, in the dreams, in the water. I left his office shaking. That night I went home and dreamed again. But this time, when I stood at the lake's edge, she wasn't alone. Mason, Ellie was standing beside her, both of them staring at me, waiting. I thought I was getting closer to the truth. I thought Harrow had given me the missing piece. But what he gave me was a lie. The next morning, I came in early before the shift started. Something about his story didn't sit right. He'd admitted just enough to keep me quiet, to make me think I understood. But I didn't, not yet. I snuck into his office. The staff keys gave me access to most places in the hospital, including the restricted archive cabinet beneath his anks. It took me less than 5 minutes to find what I wasn't supposed to see. A cassette tape, labeled Subject 06, Final Interview, Room 6. I took it home that night. I sat at my kitchen table in the dark and pressed play. At first just static, then the hum of fluorescent lights, footsteps, a chair scraping, and then, her voice, small, childlike, not Mason's, Ellie's. They keep asking me what I remember, she said, soft and hesitant. But it's not my memory, it's hers. A pause, then the interviewer, Harrow's voice, calm, clinical. Whose memory are you referring to? There was a long silence. Then the girl whispered, the nurse, the one who watched me drown. My hands trembled. The audio clicked and hissed. Then Harrow asked something that made my blood turn to ice. Do you think she'll come back? And the girl, Ellie, replied, she never left. I stopped the tape. I wanted to scream. He'd known. Harrow had known everything. Not just about Mason. Not just about rooms. He knew about me. He'd been part of it all along. And not just a bystander, he was involved. Complicit. I confronted him the next night. He didn't deny it. You think this place just collects the broken, he said. No. It collects the forgotten. The unprocessed. The ones who never made it to the surface. He told me something that shattered what little sanity I had left. You weren't just there when she drowned. You brought her to the water. I don't remember doing that. I can't remember. But that's the thing, isn't it? Trauma hides behind the things we convince ourselves we'd never do. He said they'd tried to help her pass on. Rituals, exorcisms, sedation. Nothing worked. She doesn't want to leave, he said. She wants you to remember. And then he said the most chilling thing of all. You're the last anchor, Linda. Once she's done with you, she'll be free. I left his office in a daze. The truth coiled in my gut like something venomous. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a reckoning. And it had been waiting for me since the day I forgot what I did. I tried to leave that night. I packed a small bag, grabbed my keys, didn't even lock my apartment behind me. I drove until I hit the edge of town, heart racing, hands trembling. But I didn't get far. The road that should have taken me west toward the highway, instead curved back toward the woods. 3 times. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean I watched the road signs repeat themselves. Same twisted oak, same half-fallen mailbox. I was driving in circles. She wasn't going to let me leave. When I finally made it back to my building, it was past midnight, and the lights in my apartment were already on. But I hadn't left them that way. Inside, the air was humid, wet. I stepped in and felt the floorboards slick beneath my shoes. There were muddy footprints, small ones leading from the door to the living room, and in the center of my rug was a puddle. Still water, no source, perfectly still. I backed away, but the lights flickered and died. And then I heard it. That same voice, soft, watery, muffled as if from beneath the floorboard. Linda. She was here. I don't remember picking up the lamp, but I did. I hurled it toward the puddle. The crash echoed like it had shattered glass underwater, and the puddle rippled outward impossibly, like something was surfacing from within it. I fled. I didn't go to the hospital. I couldn't. I ended up at Jasmine's place. I hadn't planned to. My hands just found the steering wheel. She let me in without a word. I've seen her too, she said. In the mirrors. In the vents. The staff won't say it, but they've all felt it. She showed me something then. Something she'd kept hidden for months. It was a sketch. Drawn in charcoal. Wet, smeared violent lines. It was the lake. The dock. The girl. And standing beside her was me. I drew this 2 weeks before you transferred here, Jasmine whispered. I felt sick. My past, my buried guilt had somehow infected this place long before I arrived. Later that night, I went to the bathroom and found something carved into my mirror, not written, etched into the glass. You watched. Now you'll see. And behind me, in the reflection, I saw the lake again, not my bathroom. The lake. I turned around. Nothing. But the floor was wet again. She wasn't a ghost. She was memory given form. Grief turned physical. And she had crossed over. I knew it had to end where it started. At the lake. Not the memory of it. The real one. The place where Ellie drowned all those years ago. The place I hadn't returned to in nearly 3 decades. It was just past 2 a.m. when I reached it. Briar Lake looked smaller than I remembered, but no less haunting. The moon was full, casting light over the black water like a cold hand. The dock was still there, rotted, creaking, like it had been waiting for me, just like her. I walked down the old path, flashlight trembling in my hand, until I stood at the edge, my breath fogged in the air. The silence was crushing. And then, I saw her. Not a dream, not a vision. She rose slowly from the water, skin the color of dusk, hair drifting like seaweed around her face. Her eyes, those hollow glassy eyes, locked on mine. She didn't speak. She didn't need to, because suddenly, I remembered everything. I'd brought her here. It was supposed to be innocent, just kids playing. I was mad at her for something trivial, I don't even remember what. And when she slipped, when she reached out screaming my name, I stood there, frozen, watching. I didn't help. I didn't scream for help. I ran. I told my parents I'd been homesick all day, and when the police asked, I repeated what they told me. I made myself believe it, until even the nightmares blurred into stories. But Ellie remembered, and now she wanted me to see it, to feel it. My flashlight flickered, then died. She stepped forward, onto the dock, her bare feet making no sound. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice breaking. I didn't know what to do. The air thickened around us. My chest burned with a pressure I couldn't describe. My hands trembled as I knelt before her, the dock groaning under my weight. Then take it back, she whispered. Take it all. She touched my forehead, and I felt everything. Her panic. Her cold, her lungs filling, the weight of the water crushing down, the betrayal in her heart as she realized no one was coming. I screamed until my throat tore open, and when I opened my eyes, she was gone. Only the lake remained. Still, quiet, watching. But I wasn't alone. I looked at my reflection in the water, and I saw her eyes looking back at me. They found me at dawn, curled on the dock, soaked to the bone, shivering, and incoherent. A fisherman called it in. Paramedics wrapped me in blankets, asked questions I couldn't answer. I was admitted under a 72-hour psychiatric hold. Ironic, considering my profession. I didn't fight it. I couldn't. I spent those 3 days in a hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of fluorescent lights that reminded me too much of room 6. I didn't speak, didn't eat. I didn't sleep either. Not really. Because every time I closed my eyes I was back in the water, back in her. But something had changed. The dreams weren't fragmented anymore. They were whole. She was whole, and I was empty. After my release I tried to return to work, but Oakbridge had closed. Permanently. No explanation, no warning, just shuttered overnight. Staff scattered, patients transferred or simply vanished. Dr. Harrow, gone. No forwarding address. No record in the state registry, like he was never there. I went back once, The building was already being gutted. Developers said they were turning it into condos, but as I stood outside, I saw the window to room 6, and in the glass, just for a moment I thought I saw her reflection again, smiling. They say what happened to me was a breakdown, repressed trauma resurfacing, a long-delayed reckoning of guilt, but they're wrong. This wasn't just psychological. Ellie was real, is real. I gave her my memories, my guilt, my truth, and now, I carry her. I dream of things I never lived. Cold depths, murky silence, the desperate press of water against lungs too small to scream. I wake gasping, drowning in air. She's not haunting me anymore. She's inside me. Sometimes I feel her emotions rise through mine like bubbles in the dark. Anger, loneliness, sorrow so vast, it swallows everything. Other times, it's peace, heavy, but peaceful. There's a mirror in my bedroom I keep covered now, not out of fear, out of respect, because when I see my reflection too long, I can't always tell who's looking back, me or the girl who never stopped calling my name. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Now you know why I don't tell this story out loud. Because once you hear it, once you really see it, you'll never look at your dreams the same way again. And sometimes, just sometimes, they'll start looking back.